So I'd like now to call up our first speaker, Philippa Rogers from Rail Heritage WA. Philippa's going to be speaking on the challenges and opportunities of rail heritage in the 21st century. Now, Philippa is a professional historian with a special interest in WA's railways, and as president of Rail Heritage WA, she works on a range of projects from exhibition development to infrastructure planning. She's written several books relating to WA's railway history. Please welcome Philippa up to the stage.
And I hope you've enjoyed your lunch, but if you're going to fall asleep after lunch, please don't snore. I'd like to pay my respects to the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of this land and acknowledge the strength of their continuing culture. So, that's what our museum looks like, if you haven't been there. And here's some information about us. I'm not going to go through it all, it's all there. But as you can see, we've been around for quite a while now, and we're still totally volunteers, so everything I'm talking about is relatable to so many small museums. Our biggest challenges and opportunities in the 21st century don't actually require us to change our ambitions or interests, but to approach them in a different way. A key example is our need for infrastructure, due to the increasing impact of climate and the weather on our collection, our visitors and our volunteers. This is currently our main challenge, but as we began that journey and listened to our younger volunteers, the type of infrastructure that should be a priority changed for me and for the organisation, and new opportunities emerged. Everything about railways is big. Big items, big impact, big costs, and if you've got to move them by truck, I can assure you big cost is the factor. Like others though, our collection of railway heritage is impacted by environmental change, but so are our volunteers. Sustainability is now a key focus for us in terms of conservation, volunteers, environmental and economic challenges. And so we ask, will tackling aspects associated with volunteers significantly contribute to the resolution of other impacts on sustainability? Okay. This is our purpose, broad as many of them are, and we need to achieve this in a sustainable and viable way. I'm speaking of the sustainability of our organisation being financial and human resources, slightly different to the usual economic, social and governance, but it is the same, and our volunteers are key to that. Knowing our volunteers leads to an understanding of them and the relevant importance of sustainability. We know that without our volunteers we can't achieve anything, whether from opening the museum, managing an archive, small object collection, large maintenance, or even operating trains. For your interest, did you know that there is actually a document called the Riga Charter, which is the borough charter equivalent for operating railway vehicles, and this is accepted worldwide. So it's a whole set of guidelines about these large items, which makes our sustainability very strongly linked with the heritage sector. So what does sustainability look like for us? Well, environmental. The impact of climate change and the extremes of the sun and the rain mean our large object collection cannot remain outside unhindered, and our volunteers can't cope with restoring it outside either. The weather is harsh. Forced departure from Midland workshops for ours in 2006 saw most of the carriages that were housed there go into the weather at Bassendean. 3 were fortunate enough to go down to the South West Rail and Heritage Centre in Boynup, where they are undercover. And they do short runs of short trips behind a steam locomotive several times a year. And if you look at these 2 photos, that one over there is clearly the ones that have been out of the weather, and this is what happens in less than 3 years in the weather for a timber vehicle. We adopted social aspects of encouraging, accepting and supporting diversity. And our governance in working with our volunteers has shown that they don't want a hierarchy. Yes, we need to provide a physically, mentally and emotional safe place and suitable work environment, but it's about team input. Administration, not hierarchy, is important. And I note that this younger generation, particularly those in the workforce, have a different and more accepting approach to safety and regulations than do many older people and the not in my day voices. For the rail sector, including tourists and heritage and organisations as small as ours, this attitude is critical when even moving a piece of rolling stock requires medicals and paperwork. A colleague in the eastern states suggested this attitude from younger people is more prevalent in Western Australia, and the only reason we can think of it is because of our stronger industrial focus. So who are these volunteers who've repositioned our focus? I'm going to talk about our volunteers. There's lots of differences, but these are our volunteers, some of them fairly new. So I'm speaking about a group of 14 to 29-year-olds. Well, let's call them Gen Z, because that's pretty well the label that we use. This group is now second in size to our over 65s volunteers. So who are they? What's important to them? We're told things in the media like they don't want to volunteer, but that's actually not the case. But they are all different. They are digitally native. They're born that way. They don't like phone calls, unless in an emergency. Communications are instant, but they engage widely with others through all sorts of apps and messenger groups and chat groups. They demonstrate networking on steroids. The complaints we hear from other people about, oh, they're always on the phones, doesn't reflect the outcome of this level of communication. Their communication is there, it's just different. They're environmentally aware, very concerned about climate change with the extremes of rain and sun. So working outside in the direct sun is a problem. I've had one of them come to me and go, look, I'm going to take the summer off. I can't cope with the weather out there. And they can see that impact on the collection themselves. They're a diverse group. Ours range from students, tradies, professionals such as environmentalists. We have people who also see themselves as part of the LGBTQI+ community. Like many rail groups, there's a very large extent of neurodivergent people. They each have strengths in different ways. A sense of belonging is important to them. One day one of them said to me, I have found my tribe. That sense of belonging was so important. Others are people persons. Many aren't, and you can't put square pegs in round hole. Ask, find out, listen. They can be social and collaborative in the right setting, and that helps with our problem solving too. Many are confident and can be encouraged to try new skills, but they do need to be heard. They're not afraid to experiment, and change is okay if you work with them. This cooperative change is particularly important if you're working with, as a number of ours are, on the autism spectrum. Bring them along for the journey. They don't volunteer for a single organisation either at one time or for the rest of their life. Similar to employment, it's no longer that sort of attitude. It doesn't mean they're disloyal. Creating inclusive spaces isn't just about representation. It's about reflecting the communities we serve, attracting new generations of volunteers and keeping that railway knowledge alive. So what did they tell us was actually important? Well, our next infrastructure project was going to be adding some more roof cover museum. Much needed, difficult task with the shape of the block. After that was going to be creating an enclosed work area where preservation and maintenance of large items could take place. But as Gen Z volunteers put forward a case for a change in these priorities, demonstrating that the enclosed work area was a key to their volunteering and their beliefs. it extended up to, let's create it off-grid, let's make sure we've got worse water conservation, let's do recycling. And so it grew, but they got an ownership. It's not that our older volunteers were against such ideas, but they'd been reduced to managing with so little for so long that they didn't see that change. I must admit, though, their reminiscences of working in the Midland workshops and having a midweek work group that looked like that certainly encouraged to look at those side of things. We had men's sheds before they even a term. When we spoke to them about, well, what's the time impact on the other structures if we do it this way? They made a very strong case. The work area will provide more efficient preservation works and allow us to quickly target minor works before they become major. But they still recognise that more cover overall was the best outcome. They are quick with online research for solutions or ideas across the world, and they do prefer a team approach. They expect to be valued for what they know, not judged on their age. Generally, they're not project managers yet, but are willing to take on small projects and come along as part of that journey. Here's one example. Last year, we restored Western Australia's only electric locomotive. It spent its working life at East Perth Power Station. And this is a really good example of the issues faced and the way Gen Zs work. So James, there in the blue shirt, is a Gen Z volunteer. He undertook the role of project manager, his first. We worked closely on ensuring the significance was recognised, which included more than one trip to the paint supplier to get the colour right. All the work was done outside, working around the heat and the rain. Now, James was only he was only able to work on weekends, because like most Gen Zs, he worked during the week. He coordinated a team that included Zen, on the right, a university student. Now, Zen had paid work on weekends, but he volunteered during the week. James and Zen had this excellent communication sharing via Messenger, the activities, questions, focus on what they were doing. There were others involved, but James saw them in person. Now, this photo with the Governor and his wife, and James and Zen, was taken for the 100th birthday celebration after the project was completed. This was the first time James and Zen had ever met. So it was a really significant, different way of working. Volunteering has always benefits. I'm sure most of us know that. Here's another example. It's a steam locomotive that was returned to operating condition in 2021. Era of COVID, if you remember, lots of closures. So it was a much smaller team that finished this project off. There were 3 of them, and you'll see them there with an award that they won for that work, a national award. One had past experience restoring that locomotive. Another had general steam experience, 25 years of age. And one was a fast learner who turned 18 during the restoration. He now has an apprenticeship with a rail-based company based on our recommendation. They all continue to learn and share knowledge and skills. And those skills include learning how to drive and maintain a steam locomotive, not the usual. So our education isn't just about for visitors. Time is running out to ensure that our lost trade skills are kept and need to be shared with new generations. And this is one of the ways we can do that. Obviously, the organisation benefits greatly. Heritage Rail is more than about preserving the past, it's about building the future. Without a new generation to take over, the knowledge, skills, passion that keep museums and historic railways running will be lost. If we don't act now, there won't be a future to preserve. You might be interested to know that the rail sector is so regulated that if we want to move a locomotive or a carriage down the track, even within our museum yard of 5 metres, we have to be an accredited operator under the National Rail Safety Law. It's a massive, the same law that applies to the grain trains in the Indian Pacific. It's a whole new level. Young people are very useful to us that way. They only need a medical every 5 years. You get to 60, you've got to pay for one every year. So much more economic. So we are tackling succession planning with our younger volunteers being heard and involved in the decision making. They're not always impatient. A few conversations now, they have, a couple of them adopted a very cheeky catch cry that goes, "I'm only 21, so as we try to encourage them, they can't solve all the problems on day one. But I would say don't be afraid to give them a go. Well, we aren't just benefiting from input into infrastructure and future increased skill sharing, but from new ideas. This last weekend, for the first time, we developed a performance-based evening event called Tracks After Twilight. I don't have any photos of the event because it only happened on Friday and Saturday nights. The most important aspect, though, is that these young volunteers who put it together did so without micromanagement, but with consultation. Yes, it was a success in the establishment of trust and support for the skills that they bring in from their other lives, and making it a safe place for people to express the ideas and be themselves. Of the groups that came along to this event, and there were 4 sessions we ran, 75 to 80% had never been there before. A couple of quick reviews, because I know we'll be short of time. One show reviewer wrote, "It's too late to leave, the door is already locked." These chilling words set the tone for one of the most innovative and immersive theatre experiences you'll ever experience this century. Another wrote, "I stepped into the shadows at Tracks After Twilight, and I'm still thinking about it. Atmospheric, clever, unlike anything I've ever done in Perth. A huge bravo to the team for creating something so immersive and original. If you missed out, trust me, you'll want to keep your eyes on what's happening next." Fantastic outcome. In the context of this morning's session, I would liken the rail network as an ecosystem. And what's interesting is, in our heritage system, we have individual places recognised, but there's no recognition of the items that operated between those places or the railway line that connected them. This is a big gap in the story. And associated with that, the stories of the people are missing. We have Aboriginal people who worked on the railways, but also impacted by construction. The general workforce, migrants, displaced persons who spent their time on the railways as their compulsory 2 years. There are great opportunities now to look at stories about families and communities. So our young volunteers can not only look towards preserving heritage rolling stock and those skills, but ensuring our stories, access to information and photos is there. So what's the outcome? Well, the young people were involved in the origin and I hope the future. When the museum was developed, and this is what it looked like 55 years ago, the young were key workers. They were very young, some of them still volunteer. Now the focus responds to new conditions with an enclosed shed, with accommodation for railway rolling stock that also gives storage of rare parts, provides for the development of preservation skills and for maintenance and restoration. The result would be a decrease in financial and human resources. If a wooden carriage needs a complete repaint every 2 to 3 years, then you start to see the cost of materials and time. People talk about painting the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Believe me, this is worse. It also reduces the need to introduce new parts, new components, and takes away some of the pressure on always feeling you're catching up. So for us, working with Gen Z volunteers has given us a focus that will result in increased sustainability and will improve the future of our heritage collection, now that we understand it through the viewpoint of the young volunteers who will be the custodians in the future. I see it as succession planning at the best. Yes, there are many challenges, but with a management committee that already has 2 Gen Z members on it, there is hope. We still need volunteers in more areas, but by welcoming Gen Z volunteers and providing a safe environment so they can find their tribe, we have a future. The interaction with any volunteers requires listening, trust, acceptance. and a place where fun can be had and opinions respected. Only then can our organisation have a sustainable future. It's not always easy, but it's worth the effort for individuals and for the organisation. Thank you.
Do you mind just staying up on the stage, because we have a couple of questions that have come through as well? Great, so we have a few minutes where we would love to do a question and answer. So we've got a couple of roving mics, and so would love to see if anyone's got any questions. We've got one here at the back.
I'd just like to know what dark magic you're using to recruit Gen Zers.
It's contagious, Lee. Once we find that social side, and that was really important for our younger volunteers, it spreads. They're the best components. Also, I think providing that welcoming space is really important. We've got some people in their 20s and 30s who've been scarred by previous volunteering where their diversity's not been accepted, and they spread the word too that this is a safe place. So, yeah, encourage them. We also offer them a discount on their membership if they get someone else in.
Any other questions from the floor? I'm just keeping an eye on the computer as well to see if we've got any coming in online, so just give me a second to check here. While I'm doing that, I just want to share a little bit of personal story. I'm involved in a number of not-for-profits, including an organization called Museum of Perth, and we're the owners of a Midland Railway FA class break-even, which apparently you have a sister wagon at the Rail Museum there. So very excited. We've got it in storage. It's actually outside on a hard stand at the moment at one of our tourism providers. And interested just from a personal view as a separate not-for-profit organization, how would we work together with you to potentially and we have volunteers as well, but to try and sort of coordinate a restoration of that wagon?
One of the things that Rail Heritage does unofficially is we end up providing that sort of advice through the passion of some of our volunteers to all sorts of community groups all over the state. And we like to get things done right and to respect the history and the heritage. So we start by, it's a simple question. Let's find out the story. Let's find out its history. What is it like now, and where do we go? And we would certainly work with you on something like that.
Fantastic, that's great. Any other questions from the room? It's right here.
Not really a question, but I'm from the city of Busselton, and we have restored the Ballarat engine, and Philippa and her team were invaluable in checking over all the information that we had to make sure that it was all correct, and adding lots of extra information, so that made us look real good. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. We still have a couple more minutes if anyone does have another question they'd like to ask. Again, just give me a second here. I'm just going to check one more time online. And this is out to anyone who is viewing out there on the internet. If you've got a question, we're keeping an eye on the interaction piece here online. So if you do have a question, it will come up to us. Just a sec here. I'll bring the mic over.
Pamela, you mentioned you had the Borough Charter and you had something adapted for use. What was the name of that?
So it's called the Riga Charter. I've got a copy here if you want to have a look at afterwards. It was developed in Riga by the Federation of European Rail Groups, and since then, 2005, it's become accepted worldwide. And I guess it's probably most closely related to the idea of the conservation of large objects, where you see people like the National Museum driving the best way to conserve things that used to be operational and how to recognise that significance. But I do have a copy I'm happy to show you afterwards.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Just one right here.
My grandfather came across when he was young to work on the railways. I was just wondering if you had any online archives of like railway history, which I might be able to search for some more information.
If you're looking at his employee records, where he worked and so on, State Record Office is the best place for that. They keep all those records, and quite a number of them are actually online, particularly the workshop's records. Our biggest databases that we keep online that are separate to something like that, I hope your grandfather didn't fall into either of them. One of them is Killed on Duty, and we're talking about 370 railwaymen who were killed at work, and also the others who lost their lives in World War I or II. So, but yes, that's probably the best.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Time for probably one more question if there's one out there. I'll just scan the audience for a hand up. Fantastic. Just in the middle.
Hi, what platforms do you use to advertise volunteering positions?
Facebook and Instagram mainly, but quite honestly, we found that this individual to individual is the best. It's just the way that that particular Gen Z group communicate and encourage them to talk to their mates and each other, and some of them come along, oh, I met this girl at uni and she's going to come and do this, and you know, these sort of things too. It's, once we got the first few in the door, and it just seemed to grow, and to the point that our new Gen Z volunteers are actually outnumbering significantly our loss of volunteers when the Grim Reaper comes along at the other end.